The killing blow never landed. Eddie Brock's consciousness registered triumph. Carnage pinned beneath them, the red symbiote weakening, Cletus Kasady's perpetual laughter finally strangling into silence. Their jaws unhinged, teeth descending toward the pulsing throat mass where madman and monster merged into one killable thing. Then, reality screamed. The Alchemax quantum tunneling array, the experimental transit gate Kasady had been attempting to hijack, the entire reason for this chase through a shattered research facility, suffered catastrophic bleed-through. Carnage's wild thrashing had severed the spatial anchoring conduits. Venom's mass had disrupted the calibration field, and the device, never designed to operate without containment protocols, did the only thing unstable dimensional technology could do. It discharged. The rift tore open not beside them, but through them, a shrieking wound in space-time that cared nothing for the physics of bonded organisms. Eddie felt the symbiote's agony as a white-hot lance through his spine. The world became geometry without meaning, distance without dimension, cold so profound it burned. The scream stretched across infinity. Then, impact, concrete cratered beneath their combined mass. The symbiote absorbed the kinetic trauma automatically, redistributing force through every cell. But Eddie still tasted blood where his teeth had cracked together. Steam rose from flash-heated stone as they lay motionless, staring at unfamiliar stars through a haze of dimensional afterburn. Other? We are intact. The symbiote's mental voice carried something Eddie rarely heard: exhaustion. The passage was not meant for living things. We held ourselves together. Barely. Carnage. Where's? Gone. Eddie forced their body upright, the black biomass rippling as it shifted from impact absorption to combat configuration. They stood in a rubble-strewn alley, brick walls rising on either side, the distant wail of sirens cutting through humid night air. We felt him tear away during transit. The spatial energies pulled us apart. He is not with us. Dead? A pulse of uncertainty through their bond. Unknown. The rift was violent, but Carnage has survived worse. Eddie's jaw tightened beneath the mask. Assuming Kasady's death was exactly the kind of optimism that got innocents murdered, they would operate under the assumption that Carnage lived, that he was here, wherever here was, that the clock was already ticking toward a body count. But first, location, context, threat assessment. The symbiote extended invisible sensory tendrils, tasting the air, the stone, the electromagnetic spectrum. The city beyond this alley hummed with human life, vehicle traffic, broadcast signals in familiar English. American infrastructure, modern era. But something in the atmosphere carried a chemical undertone they didn't recognize, a faint signature woven through the population itself, strongest in certain individuals. There. The symbiote's attention focused 3 blocks east. That one. The chemical density is extreme, and he is hurting someone. Hurting someone. Eddie didn't hesitate. They launched upward, tendrils catching fire escapes, momentum carrying them across rooftops in fluid silence. The city stretched beneath them. Not New York. The skyline was wrong, but similar enough. Towers of glass and steel, billboards showing faces they didn't know in costumes that screamed superhero without any of the substance. Vought International read one massive display, protecting America since 1971. Beneath the slogan, a team photo. 7 figures in carefully designed costumes, their smiles as manufactured as their image. The central figure, blonde, handsome, draped in an American flag cape, had eyes that Eddie's journalist instincts immediately flagged as wrong. Later, focus. They dropped into an alley behind a warehouse where the screaming had originated. A woman was pressed against filthy brick, her clothes torn, a man in a silver and blue costume pinning her wrists above her head with one hand while the other. Eddie saw enough.
Hunger.
The symbiote didn't ask permission. Neither did Eddie. The man in the costume never heard them coming. One moment he was laughing, confident in his anonymity, in his power, in whatever twisted entitlement his abilities had cultivated. The next moment, black tendrils wrapped around his throat and pulled. What the f— His words ended in a wet crunch. Eddie felt the symbiotes feeding as a rush of warmth, of completion, but beneath that familiar sensation, something else, something new. The dead man's tissues carried that strange chemical compound, and as the symbiote broke down his biomass, Eddie felt a pulse of enhanced vitality surge through their bond.
That was.
What? What is it?
We don't know, but it felt good. Very good.
The woman had fled, sobbing, vanishing into the night. Eddie let her go. She'd seen nothing she could describe, only black shapes and red teeth in the dark. He looked down at what remained of the man. Partial dissolution. The costume, gaudy, branded with a logo Eddie didn't recognize, was scattered across grimy concrete. He wasn't normal. That compound in his blood. What was it?
Enhancer. Artificial metahuman augmentation. Crude. Effective. And apparently.
The symbiote practically purred.
Delicious.
They found 3 more over the next 2 hours. Not randomly. Eddie hunted with journalist precision, following the symbiote's ability to detect that chemical signature through walls, through crowds, through the electromagnetic noise of a city at night. Each time, they waited, watched, confirmed. A man who could generate localized gravity wells, using his power to crush a homeless encampment for fun. The symbiote tasted fear on his dying breath and found it exquisite. A woman with razor keratin deployable from her fingertips, slicing through a bodega owner who'd failed to pay her protection fee. Her enhanced tissue burned through their system like high-octane fuel. A speedster, not fast enough, cornering teenagers in a parking structure with obvious intent. He screamed for almost 3 full seconds before the jaws closed. Each feeding brought another surge of that intoxicating vitality. The symbiote grew more fluid, more responsive, the black biomass rippling with barely contained energy. Eddie felt stronger than he had in months. Years, maybe. This is wrong. Something's happening to us.
We are eating. We are growing. This is what we do, Eddie.
Not like this. This feels different. This feels...
better?
He couldn't argue. That was the terrifying part. By 2 a.m., they'd perched atop a water tower in what appeared to be the city's meatpacking district, surveying the urban sprawl with new eyes. The symbiote's senses had sharpened dramatically. They could taste the chemical signatures of dozens of enhanced individuals scattered across the metropolitan area, some faint, some blazing like bonfires. The strongest concentration pulsed from a massive tower downtown, the same tower from the billboards. Vought, that's where the manufactured heroes come from.
Not heroes.
The symbiote's contempt rippled through their bond.
Predators. Like the ones we ate. But organized. Branded. Protected.
Eddie felt sick. Not from the feeding, from the recognition. He'd built a career exposing institutional corruption, powerful people who used systems to shield their abuse. He'd seen this pattern before. He just hadn't seen it superpowered. What the hell are you? The voice came from behind them. Eddie spun, the symbiote already reshaping their mass into combat configuration, back spines extending, claws elongating, jaws manifesting with a wet snarl of anticipation. 3 figures hovered in the air behind them. The first was a man in an aquatic-themed costume, scales glinting under city light, a trident clutched in hands that trembled slightly. His eyes were wrong. Not predator wrong like the billboard figure, but broken wrong. Hollow. The look of someone who'd been hollowed out and filled with something else's expectations. The second was wrapped head to toe in black tactical gear, face obscured by a featureless mask, No visible weapons, but the symbiote tasted wrongness radiating from him. Chemicals layered over chemicals. Organic damage masked by pharmaceutical overrides. Dangerous. Controlled. Not quite present in the way living things should be. The third was a woman. Blonde, draped in red, white, and blue. A rifle slung across her back and a smile that belonged on a campaign poster. Her heartbeat was elevated. Excitement, not fear. She wanted this. I asked you a question, freak. The woman's voice carried a television-trained cadence, each word precisely enunciated for maximum folksy menace. 4 of our colleagues are missing. Trail leads right to you. So I'm gonna need you to come with us, real peaceful like or what? The symbiote spoke through their shared mouth, voice reverberating with harmonic overtones that made the water tower's metal frame vibrate. Eddie felt their grin stretch too wide, too hungry, the Compound V still singing through their enhanced biomass. The woman's smile flickered. Firecracker, the aquatic man said quietly. Maybe we should wait for. Shut up, Deep. Firecracker unslung her rifle with practiced speed. Homelander said handle it. We're handling it. Homelander's not here. Which is why we are, you goddamn fish-faced coward. Firecracker's eyes never left Venom. Black Noir. Flank left. Deep, try not to embarrass yourself. The masked figure, Black Noir, moved without acknowledgement, drifting sideways through the air with unnerving silence. Eddie tracked him through the symbiote's spatial awareness, feeling tendrils ready to intercept. The quiet one's the real threat. The woman's got guns. Useless. The fishman's scared.
Agreed. But Eddie, the chemicals in their blood.
I know. I can smell it too.
We want them.
The hunger pulsed through their bond, sharper than before, more insistent. 4 feedings of Compound V-laced tissue had awakened something in the symbiote, a craving that went beyond sustenance into something approaching addiction. Control yourself. We don't know if they're guilty.
The woman's heart rate increases when she imagines violence. The quiet one has killed many. We taste old death on him. The fish.
A pause.
The fish is mostly pathetic.
Firecracker opened fire. The bullets were designed for soup engagement, tungsten core, armor-piercing, devastating against conventional enhanced physiology. Against Venom, they disappeared into black biomass, like stones into tar. Eddie moved. The symbiote launched them forward, tendrils extending, catching the rifle and crushing it in the same motion. Firecracker's eyes went wide, the first genuine emotion she'd shown, as black-clawed fingers closed around her throat. You talk too much, Eddie said, his own voice emerging beneath the symbiote's resonance. Bad habit for someone in your line of work. He threw her, not hard enough to kill. Hard enough to send her careening across rooftops, crashing through a ventilation unit, tumbling to a stop in a heap of crumpled metal and bruised ego. She'd live. She'd hurt. That was enough. Black Noir struck without sound. The blade came from nowhere, ceramic, monomolecular, designed to slice through soup-dense tissue. It carved a line across Venom's back, parting biomass, drawing something that might have been blood. Eddie felt the symbiote's outrage.
He cut us.
Yeah. I noticed. They spun, tendrils lashing. But Noir was already gone, repositioned 10 feet away, stance perfect, knife dancing between his fingers. The wound was already healing, black biomass knitting closed, but the fact that he'd landed a hit changed the calculation. He's fast. Trained. This isn't some powered-up thug.
Then we stopped playing.
Noir attacked again, a blur of precise violence, blade seeking throat and eyes and joint gaps. Eddie let the symbiote's instincts take over, their shared body becoming fluid, shapeless, every strike passing through reforming biomass, while counter-tendrils forced the masked man back. It was almost beautiful, in a horrible way. 2 predators dancing, testing, neither quite able to land a decisive blow. Then, Eddie noticed the pattern. Nowhere's movements were perfect. Too perfect. Mechanical. There was no adaptation, no learning. He executed techniques with flawless precision. But when those techniques failed, he simply repeated them. Faster, harder, as if expecting different results. He's not thinking. He's running a program.
Broken thing, like a machine wearing meat.
Eddie felt a pulse of something unexpected. Pity. He ended it quickly. A tendril feint drew Nowhere's blade out of position. A second tendril wrapped his wrist, twisted, and the knife clattered away. Before the masked man could recover, Eddie had him pinned, biomass encasing his limbs, lifting him off his feet. Through the mask, Nowhere made no sound, no struggle, just waiting. What did they do to you? Eddie muttered.
We could eat him, learn what he knows. The compound in his blood is rich.
No.
Eddie.
I said no. He's not right. Something's wrong with him. I'm not eating someone who can't even choose to fight back. The symbiote's frustration pulsed through their bond, but it subsided. They had rules, Eddie and his other, lines they'd drawn together after too many nights of waking in blood. Some people deserved to be eaten. Some people were just victims wearing villain costumes. Eddie dropped Nowhere onto the rooftop, biomass retracting, leaving the masked man sprawled but unharmed. He'd recover, or Vought would collect him. Either way, not their problem. Please. The voice was wet, trembling. Eddie turned. The deep knelt at the roof's edge, trident discarded, hands raised in surrender. Tears cut tracks through the artfully applied bronzer on his cheeks. Please don't eat me. I'll tell you whatever you want. I'll give you money, information, anything. Just don't. I can't. Eddie studied him. The symbiote studied him. What's his deal?
Fear, shame, self-loathing. He wears the costume but hates what it represents. Hates himself for wearing it. He has done bad things, Eddie. We taste them on him. But he is not. He is not like the others.
Meaning?
He knows he is pathetic. The ones we ate did not. That is a significant difference.
Eddie approached slowly, letting the symbiote's jaws retract, revealing his human face beneath the biomass hood. The deep flinched at the sight, a man emerging from a monster, or maybe a monster pretending to be a man. The tower downtown, Eddie said. Vought. Tell me about it. The deep talked. He talked for almost 20 minutes, words tumbling over each other, the hierarchy, the corruption, the abuse, Homelander's consolidating power, the disappearances, the cover-ups, the way they were all trapped in a machine designed to grind them into content. He talked about the Seven like a man describing a prison, the other heroes like fellow inmates, the executives like wardens who got off on the suffering. Eddie listened. The symbiote listened. By the end, Eddie felt that familiar sickness, the one he'd felt in the Life Foundation, at Carlton Drake's operations, every time he'd pulled back the curtain on institutional evil and found it worse than he'd imagined. This whole world is rotten.
We eat it.
We can't eat a world.
We could try.
The blonde one, Eddie said, the one on all the billboards. Homelander. Tell me about him. The Deep's face went pale. He's not like the rest of us. He's not even like the good ones, the ones who try. The Deep swallowed. He's what happens when you give a god complex to someone who was never taught to be human. And he's going to kill you for what you did tonight. What I did was remove predators from the streets. No, man. What you did was challenge him. In his city. Eating his people. The Deep shook his head. He's going to come for you. And when he does, he didn't finish the sentence. He didn't have to. 13 blocks away, Firecracker limped into the Vought Emergency Response Center with a shattered collarbone and murder in her eyes. "Get me Homelander," she snarled at the nearest technician. "Now." The call connected in under 30 seconds. The face that appeared on the monitor was exactly as handsome, exactly as hollow as the billboard suggested. "This better be important," Homelander said. "I'm in the middle of..." Something ate Mercury. Glitch, razor wire and skullface. Firecracker interrupted. Something new. Big. Black. Teeth like a shark had sex with a dinosaur. It took out Black Noir in under a minute and threw me through a goddamn building. Homelander's expression didn't change, but something behind his eyes did. Where? Meatpacking district. But it moves fast. By the time The monitor went dark. Firecracker turned to find the technician staring at her, pale and trembling. What? He flew out of the tower. He didn't even. The technician swallowed. God help whatever he finds. 1,100 miles away, in the wreckage of what had once been a highway overpass, something stirred. The dimensional transit had not been kind to Cletus Kasady. The rift's spatial energies had torn at the bond between host and symbiote, but more than that, they had torn at Cletus himself. Forces never meant for organic interaction had sheared through human tissue with casual brutality. The dimensional membrane, caring nothing for the fragile meat architecture it was violating. The Carnage symbiote had held them together through sheer, malevolent will, wrapping around ruptured organs, sealing hemorrhaging vessels, keeping the host body functional through measures that went far beyond simple healing. But Cletus was dying. He could feel it, the cold spreading inward from his extremities, the way his heartbeat had become arrhythmic, the gray pallor creeping up his left arm where the dimensional shear had been most severe. His liver was failing. His kidneys were shutting down. Something in his spine had been twisted during the passage, nerve damage cascading through his lower body in waves of fire and numbness. "We're dying," he thought. Not to the symbiote. There was no need. They were one. The thought was shared the instant it formed.
The host flesh is compromised beyond sustainable repair.
The Carnage symbiote's voice carried something Cletus had never heard before. Frustration.
We can sustain function for hours, perhaps a day. But the cellular damage is too extensive, too deep. We cannot rebuild what the passage destroyed.
Cletus smiled through the pain. It was not a pleasant expression. It was not meant to be. Then we need a new host.
Yes.
He'd woken in the crater of his own impact, surrounded by twisted metal and shattered concrete, the screams of distant survivors carrying through the night air. The sky was wrong, different stars, different satellites, different everything. And Eddie Brock, his beloved enemy, his perfect opposite, was nowhere to be found. But Cletus could feel something. A pull, a resonance, the faintest trace of the Venom symbiote's signature, carried on dimensional echoes, pointing toward a city far to the northeast. Eddie was here, somewhere, alive, good.
But first, survival. The host flesh will fail before we reach him.
Cletus forced his ruined body upright, the Carnage symbiote flowing over dying tissue, hiding the decay beneath a shell of perfect crimson malevolence. His left arm hung useless. His legs trembled with each step. Inside his chest, things were wrong in ways that transcended simple injury. He didn't care. Pain was an old friend. Death was just another boundary to violate. And there were so many screaming people nearby, just waiting to become material, sustenance to keep him moving long enough to find something better.
We need a worthy host. Strong, enhanced, someone who can contain us fully.
Carnage moved toward the screams, leaving a trail of spreading blood from wounds that would not close. The clock was ticking. High above the city, Homelander floated in silence, eyes scanning rooftops, heat vision primed. Something had eaten his people. Something had challenged him. Below, unaware of the predator circling overhead, Venom slipped through shadows, hunting for answers in a world of manufactured monsters. Two apex predators in the same territory. The city, held its breath. Homelander found him 17 minutes after takeoff. The creature was perched on a water tower in the garment district, silhouetted against the amber glow of city lights, utterly still, watching, waiting, as if it had known he was coming. Homelander hovered 200 feet away, cape rippling in the wind, and looked. The thing was wrong. Not soup wrong. He'd seen every flavor of Compound V mutation imaginable, the failures and the successes and everything in between. This was something else entirely. Alien. The black biomass that comprised its body moved with organic fluidity, rippling like oil on water, occasionally sprouting tendrils that tasted the air before retracting. The eyes, massive, angular, white against the darkness, tracked him with predatory focus. And the teeth, row upon row of them, gleaming in a jaw that split the creature's face nearly in half, saliva dripping in long strings that sizzled faintly when they hit metal. "So," Homelander said, his voice carrying across the distance with practiced authority, "you're the thing that's been eating my people." The creature's head tilted. When it spoke, the voice resonated with harmonic overtones that made the water tower's frame vibrate.
"Your people were filthy. Murderers. Predators who preyed on the weak."
"They were mine." Homelander's eyes began to glow, heat building behind the blue. "Everything in this city is mine. Every soup, every civilian, every goddamn pigeon. And you, whatever you are, you came into my territory and took what belongs to me."
"We took nothing of value."
The words hung in the air. Homelander felt something twist in his chest, that familiar pressure, the one that built whenever someone failed to show proper respect, the one that demanded correction. "You know," he said softly, "I was going to make this quick, professional, but now I think I'm going to take my time. Really savor it." The creature's jaw split wider. It was smiling.
"Eddie, he wants to savor us."
A different voice emerged, human, tired, almost amused. "Yeah, I heard him. Pretty sure that's the same speech every 2-bit villain gives before we eat their face."
"We like this one. He has confidence."
"Confidence and capability aren't the same thing, bud."
"No, but watching him learn that will be fun."
Homelander's heat vision lanced out, twin beams of concentrated solar energy that could bisect armored vehicles, melt steel, reduce human beings to ash in milliseconds. They hit the creature, dead center, and stopped. Eddie felt the impact as a wave of searing pressure, the symbiote's biomass absorbing and redistributing the thermal energy across their entire surface area. It hurt, a deep, cellular burn that made his teeth ache, but it didn't penetrate. The symbiote was already adapting, outer layers carbonizing and sloughing off while fresh tissue regenerated beneath. That's his big gun?
The heat is extreme. Sustained exposure would be problematic. But he is not sustaining. He is showboating.
Then let's show him what we've got. Venom launched. The distance between them vanished in an instant, tendrils extending to catch the water tower's frame, momentum translating into a trajectory that brought them directly into Homelander's space. The blonde soup's eyes widened, genuine surprise, maybe the first he'd felt in years, as black claws raked across his chest. The costume tore. Beneath it, skin parted. Homelander bled. He recovered fast, faster than Eddie expected, a haymaker that caught Venom across the jaw and sent them spinning through the air. The symbiote reformed around the impact site automatically, but Eddie felt the force of it reverberating through his skeleton. Strong, really strong.
Stronger than us in raw force, but slow. Predictable. He has never fought something he could not instantly destroy.
Then let's give him an education. They collided again above the city, a brutal exchange of blows that shattered windows in nearby buildings, each impact sending shockwaves rippling through the urban canyon. Homelander was power incarnate. Every punch carried enough force to level structures, every movement backed by flight capabilities that gave him 3-dimensional dominance. But Venom, was adaptive. Eddie let the symbiote's combat instincts merge with his own, becoming something more than human reflexes could account for. They flowed around Homelander's attacks, tendrils catching his limbs mid-swing, using his own momentum against him. When he tried to create distance for another heat vision blast, they closed the gap before his eyes could fully charge. When he grabbed them, intending to crush, they spread, biomass flowing between his fingers like water, reforming behind him, jaws finding the junction of neck and shoulder. Homelander screamed. It was not a sound he was accustomed to making. Below, the city watched. News helicopters had scrambled within minutes of the first impact, their cameras capturing the battle in shaky high definition. Drones from 4 different networks swarmed the periphery, their operators risking FAA violations and probable death for footage that would define a generation. Breaking. Homelander engaged in aerial combat with unknown entity. The ticker scrolled across every screen in the metropolitan area. In bars and living rooms, on phones and tablets, millions of eyes turned upward, some literally, those close enough to see the flashes of heat vision and the dark shape that seemed to drink the light. Vought's PR department was already in crisis mode, but there was nothing they could do. The fight was everywhere, uncontrolled, unspun, and Homelander was losing. On a rooftop 6 blocks from the engagement, Billy Butcher watched through a pair of military-grade binoculars, the tumor behind his eyes throbbing with each heartbeat. Friggin' hell, he breathed. He'd seen Homelander fight before, seen him tear through supes and soldiers alike with contemptuous ease, that smug smile never wavering, those eyes glowing with the certainty of absolute power. He'd never seen Homelander desperate. The black creature, whatever it was, had the American Golden Boy wrapped in tendrils, dragging him through the air, slamming him into building facades with methodical brutality. Each impact sent showers of glass and concrete raining into the streets below. Each time Homelander broke free, the thing was on him again, adapting, learning, finding new angles of attack. And the teeth. Christ, the teeth. They'd already found Homelander's shoulder, his thigh, his forearm. The wounds healed fast, but not fast enough. The creature was eating pieces of him faster than he could regenerate. "What are you?" Butcher muttered. The answer didn't matter. Not really. What mattered was simple mathematics. Enemy of my enemy. If this thing could hurt Homelander, really hurt him, then it was the most valuable asset on the planet, and Billy Butcher intended to acquire it. The fight lasted 11 minutes. It felt longer. Every second stretched into an eternity of violence, the 2 combatants tearing through the skyline with the inevitability of natural disaster. 3 buildings suffered structural damage. A news helicopter nearly went down when a stray tendril clipped its tail rotor. The streets below had been evacuated for 6 blocks in every direction, but the sound carried further. The wet impact of flesh on flesh, the shriek of tearing metal, and beneath it all, the increasingly frantic screams of a god learning what it meant to be mortal. Eddie had stopped thinking. The symbiote had taken over the tactical processing, leaving his conscious mind free to observe from a strange remove, watching his own body move in ways that shouldn't be possible, feeling the satisfaction of each successful strike without the burden of planning it. Homelander was fast. Faster than anything Eddie had faced before, his flight granting him vectors of attack that defied conventional combat geometry. But speed meant nothing when your opponent could reshape themselves around your blows, when every grabbed limb flowed like water through grasping fingers, when tendrils sprouted from unexpected angles to bind and tear and bite. He is weakening. I can feel it. The compound in his blood, it's richer than the others, more concentrated. The source, he is what they aspire to be. And we're taking him apart. Homelander broke free from their latest grapple with a burst of desperate strength, creating distance, his chest heaving with breaths he shouldn't need. His costume hung in tatters. Blood, his blood, the blood of America's golden sun, painted his exposed skin in patterns that the cameras below captured in merciless detail. "What?" He spat crimson, one eye swelling shut. "What are you?"
"We are Venom."
The name hung in the air between them, heavy with promise.
"And you?"
The symbiote's voice dropped to something almost intimate.
"You are food."
Homelander's remaining eye blazed. "I am Homelander." The words came out broken, desperate, clinging to an identity that was crumbling in real time. "I am the greatest hero this world has ever."
"You are a bully."
Eddie let his own voice emerge, human and cold. A predator who never learned what it feels like to be prey. "But you're learning now, aren't you?" The heat vision came again, both eyes this time, maximum intensity. A last-ditch effort to incinerate the thing that had humiliated him before millions of witnesses. Eddie felt the symbiote scream as the thermal assault exceeded their adaptation threshold, outer layers burning away faster than they could regenerate. "Too hot. We need to."
"Hold. He cannot sustain this."
They were right. Homelander's eye, the one still functioning, was flickering, the beam wavering, as whatever biological mechanism powered his heat vision approached exhaustion. He'd never had to use it this long, this intensely. He'd never needed to. Eddie weathered the storm. When the beams finally died, Homelander hung in the air, panting, empty. Venom struck. Tendrils wrapped around his throat, his arms, his legs, immobilizing him completely as their shared mass flowed forward, jaws unhinging, the killing bite descending toward his exposed face. Homelander did the only thing he had left. He ran. The burst of speed was unlike anything he'd shown during the fight, pure survival instinct. Every reserve of power he'd been holding back dumped into a single desperate acceleration. The tendrils tore free with wet sounds of rending tissue, leaving behind chunks of black biomass that dissolved into nothing. By the time Eddie reoriented, Homelander was a distant speck against the lightning sky. Should we pursue?
"No, let him go."
"He'll come back. Stronger. With allies."
"Yes, but now he knows what we are, what we can do, and more importantly, everyone knows what he is."
The symbiote's satisfaction pulsed through their bond.
"Beatable, vulnerable, afraid."
Eddie looked down at the city spread beneath them, the flashing lights of emergency vehicles, the distant wail of sirens, the helicopters still circling like vultures around Carrion. The cameras were still rolling. They'd all seen it. Every punch, every bite, every moment of Homelander's humiliation. The god who'd held this world in terror for years had been exposed as flesh and blood, as breakable as anyone else. "What have we done?"
"What we always do, Eddie."
The symbiote's voice carried something that might have been pride.
"We protected the innocent. We punished the guilty. We showed the world that monsters can bleed."
Eddie wasn't sure if that was a good thing. He wasn't sure of anything anymore. Billy Butcher watched Homelander's retreat through his binoculars, tracking the wounded trajectory until it disappeared beyond the horizon. "Ran away," he murmured. The mighty Homelander ran away. His hands were shaking. Not from fear, from something closer to joy. For years, he'd dreamed of this moment, fantasized about it in the dark hours between nightmares. Homelander broken, Homelander afraid, Homelander beaten, and something else had done it. Something that might be pointed at other targets. The tumor pulsed behind his eyes, reminding him of his deadline. Months, maybe less. But if he could get that creature on his side, aim it at Vought, at the whole rotten system, maybe he could burn it all down before his clock ran out. He lowered the binoculars, already planning his approach. Dawn broke over the city with indifferent beauty. Eddie found himself in a narrow alley behind an electronics store. The symbiote retracted to a thin layer beneath his clothes, his human face exposed to the early morning light. He looked like what he was, a man who'd been through war, stubble shadowing his jaw, dark circles beneath his eyes. The storefront window displayed a wall of televisions, all tuned to the same channel. The sound was muffled by glass, but the images told the story clearly enough. Footage of the fight. His fight. Played on loop with graphics that screamed crisis in the skies and Homelander, attacked by unknown entity. And then, the feed cut to a press conference. Eddie stopped breathing. Homelander stood behind a podium bristling with microphones, the Vought logo gleaming on the wall behind him. His posture was perfect. His smile was flawless. His costume was pristine. That's not possible. We tore that costume to shreds. We tore him to shreds. The wounds were gone. Every laceration, every bite mark, every evidence of their battle had vanished completely. He looked better than he had before the fight, more vital, more present, more alive. And the costume, Eddie's blood went cold. It wasn't blue anymore. The fabric that clung to Homelander's frame was deep crimson, the texture subtly wrong in a way that civilian eyes might miss, but Eddie's could not. It moved when he moved, yes, but there was a fraction of a second delay, the material catching up to the body beneath it rather than moving with it. Not fabric, biomass.
Eddie.
The symbiote's voice was barely a whisper, shock bleeding through their bond.
That is not a costume.
No, it's not. On the screen, Homelander was speaking, his voice carrying through the glass with muffled clarity. Strategic repositioning to minimize civilian casualties. The entity, which we have designated a Class Omega threat, demonstrated capabilities that required a measured response rather than immediate escalation. I want to assure the American people that Vought International, in cooperation with federal authorities, is already implementing containment protocols. The words were perfect. The delivery was flawless. But the smile was wrong. It was too wide, too hungry. And for just a moment, a single frame that most viewers would never consciously register, the camera caught a flash of something beneath those perfect teeth. Something red. Something moving. Carnage. Eddie felt the symbiote's terror merge with his own, their shared horror creating a feedback loop that threatened to overwhelm rational thought. Cletus Kasady was dying 1,100 miles away. The symbiote needed a new body, strong, enhanced, capable of containing its full potential, and now it had one. He found him, before we did.
Or Homelander found Carnage. It does not matter. What matters is
that the most dangerous symbiote in existence is now bonded to the most powerful being on this planet. On the television screen, Homelander's smile widened just a fraction more, and somewhere behind those blue eyes, Carnage laughed. "You look like death warmed over, mate." Eddie spun, the symbiote already manifesting claws before his conscious mind registered the voice. A man stood at the alley's mouth, mid-40s, hard eyes, leather jacket over a frame that had seen violence and learned to love it. He held no weapons, but everything about his posture suggested he didn't need them. Easy. The man raised his hands, palms out. "Saw your little dance with the golden boy. Impressive stuff. Been waiting for someone to knock that smug look off his face for years."
He is enhanced.
The symbiote's assessment came quick and cold.
Compound V in his blood. But different, unstable, and something else. Decay. He is dying.
Great. A dying super soldier wants to chat. Name's Butcher, the man continued, stepping closer with the confidence of someone who'd long ago made peace with mortality. Billy Butcher. And I've got a proposition for you. Not interested. You will be. Butcher's smile didn't reach his eyes. Because right now, you're the most wanted thing in America. Vaught's got every asset hunting you. Government's playing along because Vought owns the government. And Homelander, the smile faltered. Homelander's going to come for you. Again and again. Until one of you stops getting up. Eddie turned back to the television screen, where Homelander's press conference was still playing. That red costume, that wrong smile. He's already come for me, Eddie said quietly, and something came back wearing his face. Butcher's expression shifted, confusion first, then dawning horror as Eddie explained. The dimensional rift, Carnage, Cletus Kasady's dying body, and the symbiote's need for a new host. The creature that now lived inside America's greatest hero. You're telling me, Butcher said slowly, that there's another one of you. Inside him.
Carnage is not like us.
The symbiote's voice emerged, dark and heavy.
We have rules, limits. Carnage has only hunger.
So the most powerful being on the planet just got upgraded with an alien murder parasite. Butcher laughed, a broken sound without humor. Perfect. That's just perfect. We can't fight him alone, Eddie said. Not anymore. Homelander was beatable. Homelander with Carnage. He shook his head. We'll need help. And a plan. Butcher studied him for a long moment. I've got people, he said finally. Good people. Someone who'd love a shot at payback.
And we have a plan.
The symbiote's confidence pulsed through their bond, something already forming, a strategy built on predator logic. Homelander's ego is his weakness. He can't ignore a challenge. If we give him something to chase, you draw him out, Butcher finished, understanding dawning. Pull him away from the tower, from his people, from his hostages. Eddie nodded. There is one more thing. A last resort, Eddie said. The next day, the explosion ripped through a Vought storage facility in Queens at 6:47 am. Security footage, conveniently leaked to every major network, showed a black shape tearing through the complex, destroying equipment, leaving a message carved into concrete. Homelander watched the footage in Vought Tower, his fingers digging into the conference table hard enough to crack marble. Go, the voice inside him whispered. Find the prey. Finish what we started. He didn't question the impulse, didn't consider tactics or backup or the possibility of a trap. His ego wouldn't allow it. He launched from the tower's roof like a missile, red cape streaming behind him, leaving the Deep, Firecracker, Black Noir, and a dozen lesser supes standing in the conference room. Should we follow him? The Deep asked. Firecracker shrugged. Man wants to handle it solo. Let him handle it solo. None of them noticed the shadow moving through the streets below. Eddie stood before Vought Tower, neck craned upward, watching the red speck disappear into the morning sky.
He took the bait.
Now comes the hard part. The tower loomed above him, 99 floors of corporate evil, housing the supes and the secrets that kept this whole rotten system running. Time to tear it all down. The lobby of Vought Tower was designed to intimidate. Marble floors polished to mirror sheen, towering columns inscribed with the names of heroic supes who'd fallen in service. A massive statue of Homelander himself, arms spread in messianic welcome, eyes gazing down at visitors with the benevolence of a god who could unmake them at any moment. Eddie walked through the front doors like he owned the place.
14 enhanced signatures above. Strongest 3 on the 40th floor. The others scattered throughout.
Security response?
Already mobilizing. They know we are here.
Good. The symbiote flowed over him like living shadow, transforming Eddie Brock into something else entirely. Venom rose to his full height just as the first wave of Vought security, human, fragile, armed with weapons that might as well have been toys, burst through the stairwell doors. He didn't kill them. They weren't the guilty ones. But he made sure they wouldn't get back up for a while. Tendrils swept through the lobby, disarming and incapacitating with surgical precision. Bodies hit walls. Weapons clattered across marble. By the time Venom reached the elevator bank, 14 guards lay groaning in his wake. The elevator wouldn't be fast enough, wouldn't be dramatic enough. He started climbing. Firecracker found him on the 23rd floor. She'd learned from their last encounter, no rifle this time, just a bandolier of incendiary grenades, and a look in her eyes that said she was ready to bring the whole building down if it meant taking him with it. Round 2. she snarled, pulling pins. The first grenade detonated against his chest, then the second. The third. Fire bloomed across his biomass, pain lancing through the symbiote's consciousness, and for a moment, Eddie felt genuine concern. Heat was their weakness. Enough of it could.
Compound V. Her blood is rich with it.
The hunger surged. Eddie stopped fighting it. Firecracker had just enough time to see the jaws unhinge before darkness swallowed her whole. The symbiote fed quickly, not savoring, not playing, just consuming with brutal efficiency. Her enhanced tissues broke down into component proteins, flooding their shared system with a rush of power that made the previous feedings feel like appetizers. We needed that.
More. We need more.
Black Noir found him on the 35th floor. The masked man was waiting in a darkened conference room, blade already drawn, stance perfect. Eddie remembered their last fight, the precision, the mechanical repetition, the emptiness behind that featureless mask. This time, he didn't hold back. The battle was brief and brutal. Noir's blade found its marks, shoulder, thigh, across the ribs, but the symbiote healed faster than he could cut. And when Venom's tendrils finally wrapped around that masked head and squeezed, what spilled out wasn't entirely human anymore. Eddie tried not to look too closely at what he consumed. The taste was wrong. Chemicals layered over chemicals. Organic damage masked by pharmaceutical overrides. Noir had been broken long before Venom found him. The feeding felt less like victory and more like mercy.
His Compound V concentration was lower, damaged, but still useful.
Keep moving. The Deep tried to run. He made it 3 floors before tendrils caught his ankles, dragging him screaming through a shattered window. Eddie remembered their conversation on the rooftop, the pathetic confessions, the self-loathing, the admission that he knew exactly what he was. He ate him anyway. He was guilty.
They are all guilty here.
The feeding completed, and Venom felt something shift. The Compound V from 4 different supes was integrating into the symbiote's biomass, enhancing their cellular structure, pushing their capabilities beyond anything they'd achieved before. They were ready. 300 miles away, Homelander found the source of the disturbance. A warehouse. Empty except for 3 low-tier supes, Z-listers who'd been reported missing from their patrol routes 18 hours ago. They hung from the ceiling by black tendrils that had long since dissolved, their bodies arranged to spell out a message visible only from the air. Too slow. The rage that erupted from Homelander's throat wasn't entirely his own.
Tricked.
Carnage snarled through their shared consciousness.
The prey tricked us, made us leave our territory.
The tower. Homelander's eyes widened with sudden, horrible understanding. He launched skyward with enough force to shatter concrete, breaking the sound barrier before he'd risen 100 feet. The flight back took 11 minutes. 11 minutes of building fury, of imagining what he would do when he found the creature that had humiliated him. What he found was worse than imagination. Vought Tower's lower floors were gutted. Smoke poured from shattered windows. Emergency vehicles surrounded the building's base, their lights painting the morning fog red and blue. And standing in the center of the devastation, Venom, larger than before. Wrong somehow, the biomass denser, more fluid, tendrils moving with new confidence. The white eyes that tracked Homelander's descent carried something that might have been anticipation.
Welcome home.
The voice resonated across the plaza, silencing sirens and screams alike.
We've been eating your friends.
Homelander landed hard enough to crater pavement, red cape, red symbiote, settling around his shoulders with liquid grace. His smile stretched too wide, too hungry, Carnage's influence bleeding through the mask of civility. Then I guess, he said softly, it's time to return the favor. The 2 apex predators faced each other in the shadow of Empire. They collided like gods at war. The shockwave shattered every window within a 3-block radius. a ring of destruction expanding outward from the point of impact. Venom and the Thing wearing Homelander's face met in the center of the plaza. Biomass against biomass, strength against strength, and the world cracked beneath them. Eddie had fought Carnage before, dozens of times across years of blood and horror. He knew the symbiote's patterns, the wild aggression, the sadistic creativity, the complete absence of restraint that made Cletus Kasady's bond so terrifyingly effective. This was different. This was worse. Homelander's body moved with speed that defied physics, Carnage's crimson tendrils extending from his back like wings of writhing muscle. Every blow carried the force of a missile strike. Every tendril slash carved through Venom's enhanced biomass like it was paper.
He is faster than before.
I noticed. Eddie caught a fist that would have caved in his skull, the impact traveling through his arms with enough force to fracture the bones beneath the symbiote's protection. He twisted, using Homelander's momentum to throw him, but crimson tendrils caught the pavement mid-flight, redirecting, and suddenly those heat vision eyes were blazing directly into his chest. The pain was extraordinary. Venom screamed, both of them screaming. Human and symbiote united in agony as the concentrated solar energy burned through layer after layer of protective biomass. Eddie felt his consciousness flickering, the symbiote struggling to regenerate faster than it was being destroyed. Can't take much more.
Move.
He moved. A desperate tendril swing caught a streetlight, yanking them sideways just as the beam swept through where they'd been standing. The concrete beneath glowed cherry red, molten stone bubbling in the sudden silence. Homelander, Carnage, laughed. It was both their voices now, layered together in horrible harmony. The Golden Boy's practiced media-ready tenor twisted around Carnage's wet, gurgling mirth.
We like this host, Daddy.
The red symbiote's words emerged through Homelander's smiling mouth, the terms a perverse mockery of their spawning relationship.
So strong, so angry. You have no idea how long he's wanted to do this to someone, anyone, and now we can do it together.
Eddie forced himself upright, the symbiote already repairing the chest wound, pulling mass from non-essential areas to shore up critical systems. He's regenerating too. Look. The gash Venom had opened across Homelander's shoulder during the initial exchange was already gone. Not healing. Gone. The red biomass flowed like water, filling gaps, restoring damage, making the impossible body beneath even more unkillable than before.
Carnage is accelerating his healing, using the Compound V in his blood as fuel.
Same thing we did.
Yes, but he has more fuel and fewer limits.
They clashed again and again. The fight became a blur of violence. Tendrils against tendrils, claws against claws. Two symbiotes tearing at each other with the intimate hatred of family, while the hosts beneath struggled to survive. Eddie landed 3 good hits for every 5 he took. He was faster than he'd been before the feedings, stronger, more durable. But it wasn't enough. Carnage had bonded with the apex predator of this world, and together they were something beyond anything Eddie had faced. A crimson tendril punched through his abdomen. Eddie gasped, feeling the alien tissue writhing inside him, trying to spread, trying to corrupt. Get it out, get it out, get it out. The symbiote's panic flooded their bond. Eddie ripped the tendril free with both hands, hurling it away before it could take root, but the damage was done. A hole the size of a grapefruit gaped in his midsection, regeneration struggling to keep pace with blood loss. He fell. Homelander descended slowly, savoring the moment, red cape rippling with organic motion. The smile on his face was pure carnage now, too wide, too hungry, too delighted by the suffering before him. This is what you get, Homelander's voice said, his own words for once rather than the symbiote's. For embarrassing me, for making me look weak, for making them doubt.
Shut up and let us eat him,
Carnage interrupted. the mouth moving without Homelander's input.
Talk later. Feed now.
For just a moment, irritation flickered across those perfect features, two predators sharing one body, neither willing to fully submit. There. That's the crack.
We cannot exploit it. Not alone.
We're not alone. The beam of light hit Homelander square in the back. It wasn't heat vision. It was something else, pure luminescent energy, condensed starlight wrapped in human rage. Annie January descended from the morning sky like an avenging angel, her eyes blazing white, her hands extended, pouring everything she had into the creature that had taken everything from her. Get away from him. The force of her attack drove Homelander forward, crimson biomass rippling as it struggled to absorb the unfamiliar energy. He spun, snarling, heat vision already building, and Soldier Boy hit him from the side. The impact was nuclear. Eddie felt the shockwave from 30 feet away, saw the way reality itself seemed to bend around the point of collision. Soldier Boy, the original American hero, the monster who'd terrorized the boys before Homelander ever existed, drove his fist into the hybrid's jaw with 70 years of rage behind it. Remember me? Soldier Boy's voice was gravel and gunpowder. Because I remember you, you preening little copycat. Time for round 2. Homelander staggered. For the first time since the fight began, Eddie saw something other than confidence in those blue eyes. He saw uncertainty.
Now, Eddie, while he is distracted.
On it. Venom rose from the crater of his own making, wounds closing, mass redistributing, the consumed Compound V burning through his system like rocket fuel. 3 against 1 now. 2 powerhouses and a desperate survivor against a god who had never learned to share. You wanted to know what we are? Eddie's voice emerged alongside the symbiotes, human and alien speaking as one. They launched forward, jaws unhinging, tendrils extending.
We are your ending.
The battle raged across 6 city blocks, 3 against 1, and still the outcome refused to tip. Annie poured starlight into the crimson horror from above, each blast strong enough to level buildings. But Carnage absorbed and adapted, the red biomass learning to diffuse the energy across Homelander's invulnerable frame. Soldier Boy pressed the ground assault with decades of combat experience, his fists finding their marks again and again, jaw, ribs, solar plexus, each impact carrying the kind of force that had once killed entire soup teams. And Venom filled the gaps, tendrils binding, jaws seeking, exploiting every opening the other two created. For 7 brutal minutes, it almost felt like enough. Annie's light caught the hybrid mid-lunge, staggering him. Soldier Boy's uppercut snapped his head back. Venom's tendrils found an opening, jaws closing on the junction of neck and shoulder, tearing away a chunk of crimson biomass that dissolved into nothing before it hit the ground. We're hurting him.
Not enough. The regeneration is too fast. We tear, he rebuilds. We burn, he adapts.
Then we don't stop. We don't give him time to. The hybrid laughed. It wasn't Homelander's practiced media chuckle or Carnage's wet gurgling mirth. It was something new, both voices harmonizing in genuine, terrible delight.
You think you're winning.
The words came from a mouth that had split too wide, teeth multiplying, tongue bifurcating.
You think because we bleed, we're losing.
His eyes began to glow, but not like before. The heat vision that erupted from Homelander's sockets wasn't light, it was alive. Crimson biomass bled into the solar energy, the two forces merging into something that defied physics. Molten tendrils of sentient flame burst outward, curving through the air with predatory intelligence, seeking heat signatures, hunting prey.
We've been learning,
the hybrid continued, rising into the air as the burning tendrils multiplied.
Adapting, discovering what we can become.
Annie banked hard, her flight carrying her between ruined buildings, but the laser tendrils followed. They curved around corners, punched through concrete, reformed when severed. One caught her ankle, and her scream echoed across the devastation as the molten biomass burned through her boot. her skin, her bone. Soldier Boy launched himself at the hybrid, fists blazing with his own nuclear radiance. You piece of... The tendrils found him too, 3 of them, wrapping around his arms, his throat, burning as they bound. Soldier Boy's legendary durability meant nothing against heat that adapted, that intensified wherever it found resistance. His skin blackened, his radiation flared in desperate defense. But Soldier Boy had survived decades of containment, torture, experimentation. He didn't break easily. With a roar that shook the surrounding buildings, he detonated, a controlled nuclear pulse that incinerated the tendrils holding him, buying a single moment of freedom. He used it to drive both fists into the hybrid's chest, the impact sending shockwaves rippling outward. The hybrid staggered. Soldier Boy pressed, raining blows with 70 years of rage behind each one. Left hook, right cross, uppercut that snapped the creature's head back, crimson biomass spraying. For 3 glorious seconds, it looked like enough. Then the hybrid caught his fist.
Old man.
The layered voice dripped with contempt.
You were a relic before we were born. Did you really think?
The headbutt came too fast to track. Homelander's invulnerable skull meeting Soldier Boy's face with enough force to crater concrete. Soldier Boy's nose shattered. His orbital bone cracked. Blood sprayed in a wide arc as he staggered backward, vision swimming. The hybrid didn't let him recover. A kick to the solar plexus folded him in half. An elbow to the spine drove him to his knees. And then those burning tendrils wrapped around his throat, lifting him from the ground, squeezing.
You want to know the difference between us?
The hybrid's face pressed close, blue eyes glowing through crimson biomass.
You were made to be a weapon, a tool. We were made to be a god.
He threw Soldier Boy like a rag doll. The impact carved a trench through 3 city blocks. When the dust settled, Soldier Boy lay motionless in the rubble, not dead, his chest still rising and falling with labored breaths, but broken. Out of the fight. The hybrid turned toward Annie. She'd recovered enough to hover, one ankle blackened and useless, her light flickering with pain and exhaustion. But she raised her hands anyway, pouring everything she had left into one final blast. It wasn't enough. The hybrid moved faster than her light could track, a crimson blur that crossed the distance between them in an instant. One fist, wreathed in burning biomass, buried itself in her stomach. Her light died. Her eyes rolled back. And she fell. Eddie caught her before she hit the ground, tendrils cushioning her descent, laying her gently in the rubble. She was alive. Barely. But she wouldn't be fighting again. None of them would. It's just us now.
Yes.
We can't win.
No, but we can make it cost him.
The plan had been simple, crude, a backup for exactly this kind of catastrophe. Eddie had told Butcher everything the night before. The dimensional rift, the symbiotes, their weaknesses, all their weaknesses. Because Eddie was a journalist at heart, and journalists understood something fundamental about men like Billy Butcher. They couldn't be trusted, but they could be predicted.
Little Daddy.
The hybrid descended before him, 30 feet of organic horror wrapped around the frame of a god.
Alone again, like always. Nobody wants you. Nobody stays.
Eddie let the symbiote's jaws manifest. Let the smile stretch too wide, too hungry. You know what your problem is? You never shut up. He launched. Not at the hybrid, past it. Tendrils catching rubble, momentum carrying him in a wide arc that brought him around behind the creature before it could react. The hybrid spun, laser tendrils lashing, but Eddie wasn't attacking. He was hurting. Every feint, every near miss, every desperate dodge drove the hybrid backward, toward the plaza center, toward the kill zone Butcher had prepared.
He does not realize.
He's too arrogant, too certain of victory, just like Cletus always was.
The targeting zone. We are entering it as well.
I know. The realization hit the symbiote like a physical blow.
Eddie, the cannon will not distinguish between us. We will be in the blast radius.
I know.
We might not survive full exposure. Not in our current state.
Probably not. The hybrid caught him. Crimson tendrils wrapped around Venom's mass, lifting him from the ground, drawing him close. The burning heat seared through their biomass, pain flooding their shared consciousness.
Caught you,
the hybrid crooned.
No more running. No more games. Just us now. Family.
Eddie let his human face emerge from the symbiote's mask. Let Homelander see the man beneath the monster. Want to know the differences between a predator and bait? The hybrid's eyes narrowed. What? The predator never sees it coming. The sonic cannon activated. The frequency was specifically calibrated. Butcher had worked through the night with salvaged Vought technology and the technical specifications Eddie had provided. The symbiote's vulnerability wasn't just to sound, it was to specific resonance frequencies that disrupted the molecular bonds holding their biomass together. Different frequencies for different effects. And for Carnage specifically, Butcher had tuned the weapon to match the harmonic signature of its spawning, the exact resonance that would cause maximum cellular disruption to Venom's offspring. The beam was targeted, focused, a cone of sonic devastation aimed at the plaza's center, where two symbiotes were wrapped around each other in final embrace. But the focus meant gradients. At the core, where Carnage stood, the frequency was perfect, absolute, devastating. At the edges, where portions of Venom's biomass extended, the resonance was close, but not exact. Painful, damaging, but survivable for a symbiote that wasn't the target. Carnage had no such advantage. The red symbiote screamed, a sound that transcended human hearing, a frequency of pure agony that made the air itself shudder. The bond with Homelander destabilized, the sonic assault finding resonances that tore at alien tissue like acid. And Homelander had super hearing. The same enhanced senses that let him eavesdrop on conversations across city blocks, that let him track heartbeats through walls, now became his greatest liability. The sonic frequency hit his auditory system like a bomb, amplified by biology designed to detect the slightest whisper. He'd felt Carnage's pain when the symbiote first screamed. Now he felt his own, magnified, multiplied, unbearable. Blood burst from his ears, his nose, the corners of his eyes. The laser tendrils dissolved. The crimson biomass shrieked as it was torn apart on a molecular level. Homelander fell to his knees, hands clutching his skull, mouth open in a silent scream as the sonic assault and symbiote agony merged into a single overwhelming catastrophe. Eddie felt it too. The frequency wasn't tuned for him, but close was still devastating. The symbiote's cries filled his mind, their bond stretching, tearing, biomass sloughing away from his body in sheets. He held on, to consciousness, to the desperate hope that this would work, even as his vision darkened and his grip weakened. Hold. 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 The world went white. Silence. Eddie lay on his back in the rubble, staring at a sky he didn't recognize. His body felt like it had been unmade and reassembled wrong. Every nerve ending screamed, every muscle spasmed, but he was alive. Other? A flicker. Faint. Damaged.
Here. We are. Here.
The frequency. It wasn't tuned for us.
Close. Too close. We are damaged, Eddie. But intact. Carnage took the worst of it.
He turned his head, a motion that cost him dearly, and saw the aftermath. Carnage was gone. Not retreated. Not regenerating. Gone. The sonic assault had found every resonance frequency that defined its molecular structure and shattered them. Scattered chunks of red biomass lay dissolving in the morning light, twitching weakly but unable to reform. The spawn was dead. probably. And Homelander. Homelander knelt in a crater of his own making, stripped of his crimson armor, reduced to just a man in a tattered blue costume. Blood still trickled from his ears. His eyes, unfocused, confused, stared at nothing. His enhanced hearing had been overwhelmed, overloaded, destroyed. He was deaf, and more than that, he was broken. The sonic frequency had hit his super-sensitive auditory system with the force of a nuclear blast. Whatever recovery his Compound V biology might eventually achieve, right now he was as helpless as any human. More helpless. Because humans learned to live without power. Homelander never had. Footsteps crunched through debris. Eddie watched Billy Butcher walk through the settling dust, crowbar in one hand, lit cigarette dangling from his lips. The man's expression carried something that might have been satisfaction, might have been joy. He'd known, Eddie realized, known the cannon would hit them both, known that Venom would be caught in the blast radius, symbiote and host alike. The frequency was calibrated for Carnage, but Butcher had understood the collateral damage. He'd pulled the trigger anyway. He used us.
He is what he is. We knew this.
Yeah, we did. Butcher stopped in front of Homelander, looked down at the kneeling god with something approaching peace. Been waiting for this moment for a long time, mate. His voice was conversational, almost gentle. Practiced what I'd say, had whole speeches planned. But you know what? He tapped the crowbar against his palm. Homelander's mouth moved, forming words he couldn't hear himself speak. Please, maybe. Threats. Confusion. It didn't matter. He couldn't hear Butcher's response, and Butcher didn't care. I think I'd rather just enjoy the silence. Eddie's eyes closed. The last thing he heard before unconsciousness took him was the sound of metal meeting flesh, and somewhere deep in the damaged recesses of their shared consciousness, the symbiote whispered,
We did good, Eddie. We did good.
The darkness took them both.